I know it's been a while since it's been released, but I've been thinking about how I wanted to approach it. I don't want to make fun of it, I just want to give it some criticism. So I'm going to just say right now that Frontier Resolution's Snow Day is pretty bad, and to me, it shows he hasn't learned anything from Blade Randy 2069. Is it as bad as Blade Randy? No, but it's close. Now before I really get into why I feel this way, I just want to say this isn't a jab at Randy or anything like that. I saw this new short film of his and I wanted to explain why I don't think it's as good as it could be and why I feel he hasn't learned anything from the criticism of Blade Randy 2069. I also want to say something directly to Randy. Please don't dislike the video without watching or comment something like, "This is the most pointless video I've ever seen." Take this criticism and use it. Please, this should help. So this is my analysis of why Snow Day, to me anyway, is not as good as it could be. Snow Day begins with an opening credits sequence like it should. Now yes, resolution is spelled wrong, but it doesn't really matter for why I feel this could be improved. Yes, spell it right next time, but I don't want to get into that really. What I want to focus on is the audio. Now, if you notice, there are people in the background, and you can hear them. You also hear the camera zooming in and out. Now, I noticed that this has happened in a few of my videos, but I think when you present it as a short film, there's a different standard that goes with it. Now, intro, all it has is it says Randy Puff, and that it's Frontier Resolution. You know it's Randy Puff. You know it's Frontier Resolution. All of that could have been saved for the end credits. So this entire sequence could have been taken out. So you don't have to hear the people in the background. And even though you do, it should be that you hear music instead of that. The only other reason you would need an opening credit sequence is for setting the mood. The only issue is none of these shots exactly set up anything. The title lets you know that there's a lot of snow, so you know it's a snow day. The shot of shoveling the driveway doesn't need to be there. The thing is, it could be used in a good way, possibly as a transition from one scene to the next. There just isn't too much of a use for it right at the beginning. There's also a shot of his dog. Again, if it sets up the mood, fine, but his dog never appears again other than the occasional, the dog is in the background. It's just a random shot of a dog that could have been pulled from online for all we know. If the dog doesn't have any significance, get rid of the shot. The first scene begins right after, like it should. A quick thing to mention is that you can't really see too much. Yeah, it is visible, but the lighting in the shot doesn't look good. Another thing to mention about this shot is how his head is cut off for a good amount of it. You could argue that he didn't want to show his face right away, but that could be shown in another way. You also can see his face before the part where it's cut off, so that's not really an excuse. There really isn't much of an excuse at all because he could have gotten another shot where you did see his head, but that's only the technical stuff. He's begun talking, so it's time to criticize that, I guess. This dialogue isn't very good. By that, I mean it doesn't feel like anything was planned. It almost feels like the whole thing was improvised, which it probably was. I have no problem with improvisation, but you need an outline or just a script. You have to know what you're doing. And I'm sorry for my dog in the background. Another problem with this dialogue here is, well, we're supposed to believe that he is talking to someone. Instead, it feels like he's talking to no one. The way to avoid this problem is to write lines for the other person so you know as the actor and or director what's happening and who you're talking to or who the actor is talking to. It helps you sound much more believable in your response. If it's not believable, it's not good. I also want to mention quickly, if it's 8:30 and you set an alarm for 3 hours, your alarm will be set for 11:30. not 2:59. If you're gonna do something like this, just at least say that it's the time that it actually is. I think the biggest problem with this scene, though, is that it drags on way too long. With the script I mentioned earlier, this scene could have been shorter and more concise. It's a scene like this that reminds me of Blade Randy.
That's the dumbest reason to call me ever.
The next part is just the title sequence. There's nothing wrong with it, so I'm just gonna keep going. The next shot shows a bunch of family pictures next to the stairs. This shot could actually work because it sets up the mood along with the music that's playing. If he had more shots like this where he shows that he's the only one home, supposedly, it could work. The problem is he moves to a shot that looks very similar to the previous one. It's a jarring shot and seems like he's putting random shots there just to have more shots. This brings me to another problem with the whole short film. He's his own cameraman. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I don't do that, but when you're making a short film, like I mentioned earlier, you should probably have one. Now, another thing with the shot to the next shot is the closest thing I can describe it to, which I would show you, but I have no footage because it's hard to get that footage, is of a movie called Croczilla. Now, when I'm comparing your movie to Croczilla, maybe you should fix a few things there. This next scene is just him making some eggs, eating the eggs, because he put a hot sauce on the eggs and then he runs out of the room because the hot sauce was too hot. This sounds like it's a good amount going on, but it really isn't. It takes him 47 seconds to convey him getting the eggs out and making them, and then 55 seconds of him putting them on the plate and eating the eggs. This is worse than the water scene in Blade Randy. That's a total minute and 43 seconds of him making and eating eggs. There is no need for it to be that long at all, and it's easy to edit it down. Let me show you this clip of what I would have done with the scene. A disclaimer before it begins, I would have changed a few things in the filming process first, so I will have to explain one or two things after the clip, but I was able to edit it from 1 minute 43 seconds to, well, you'll see.
Spicy.
I was able to condense the minute and 43 seconds into just 32 seconds. Now, what I would have changed wouldn't have been too much extra work. I would have put a ketchup bottle next to the hot sauce, so it makes sense of why it was there. Why, there's hot sauce next to the ketchup. He accidentally grabs the hot sauce. I don't know if I'd actually even have this scene at all, but, that would have given a little bit more context. I also want to mention that he wouldn't say spicy, he would be showing his face reacting to the spice. You would be able to tell through his facial expressions, and then he'd run to the bathroom. You wouldn't see him running to the bathroom. All you'd see is the door and him coughing. Even with these small additions, it'd be so much shorter than the minute and 43 seconds. I cannot believe that this is how long it took him to convey that, which is kind of the same problem that I had with the first scene. It drags on. The next scene isn't worth spending too much time on. All it is Randy working on a paper for chemistry. The only complaint I have with it is it could have been cut. The only way you could keep this in it working is if there were other scenes like this with not much going on. It would show the passage of time and how boring his day is, but that didn't happen. It also kind of drags on a little bit too long, which is the third scene in a row that drags on. The next scene is the longest scene in the entire short, and it's way too long. It's a terrible scene, and it consists of Randy playing Fortnite for 2 minutes and 25 seconds. He loses a match, then continues playing, loses a match, then continues playing, but it shows too much of the gameplay. Now, at the beginning of the scene, this would work, but when you just keep doing that over and over, it does not work. He keeps saying one more game and then just keeps losing. Now, I think the worst part of it is the awful fade to black transition to show the passage of time. There are better ways to show it that don't look stupid. You can, just keep cutting every time he loses, show a bunch of losses, then show a bunch of reactions. Maybe at the end of the scene, it shows, wait, I've been doing this long, kind of like a casino effect. Another thing he has is text that says 10 minutes later, 1 hour later. This doesn't really work because it's just kind of weird. It doesn't feel like it should be there. And like I said, it drags on too long. Now, I think text could work if it's stylized in a certain way. It has to be stylized. You have to know what you're doing with the text. Otherwise, it's just lazy. Now, the final scene shows Randy's dad coming up to him and saying he has to go outside. Now, as he goes outside, there's a monologue of him explaining how he doesn't like to go outside. Now, personally, this is probably the best scene in the entire short film. However, I still have some issues with it, and the end kind of brings an issue I have with the entire short film. The joke of him not liking the outdoors has no payoff. Yeah, he goes outside and faints, but there's no payoff because it was just set up a few seconds ago. Think about how much better it could have been had it been set up early on that he doesn't like to go outside. There could even be a point where he lets the dog out that was in the opening credit and tries to avoid getting close to the outdoors. This would have given it something that the entire short film was lacking. Some kind of narrative. Now, looking at a movie like Lady Bird, there isn't too much of a story, but you still have these characters who have something that they're going for, which is a narrative. They still have a narrative. Now, looking at a movie like Phantom Thread, some people would say there's nothing even happening in this movie, but it still has a narrative. There's still a thread of a story, and that's the biggest problem with Snow Day. It is a series of events that, yes, are in continuity with each other, but they have no real significance to each other other than they happen on the same snow day. This doesn't give me a reason to care. Why should I care about what his day is like? With the narrative, a good narrative, there would have been a reason to care about everything that's happening. So overall, is this an improvement on Blade Randy? Yeah, kind of. I would say it's a glance in the right direction. That meaning he didn't walk in the right direction, he's not looking in the right direction, but it's acknowledged. Now, he hasn't learned anything from the criticism of Blade Randy. You can tell very easily from this. If he had, there wouldn't be scenes of him just sitting around. The editing would have been much better. This could have been easily maybe a 4-minute short. It could have been half the length, and I think it would have been much more effective. Even with editing with Movie Maker, you can still have a very effective short film, and that is the biggest problem. Let me reiterate, this is not an attack or any kind of joke. This is me explaining my problems so he can fix them in the future. I'm not sure if he can fix them for Blade Randy 2070. In fact, I've heard from an inside source that it's kinda the same thing. But I will say this, please take this criticism because this is what's gonna help you. If you don't receive any criticism and you don't pay attention to it, how are you gonna get better? Thanks for watching, gang, and I'll see you later.